Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It is, of course, talkTV. It's Friday night. Where else would you want to be? And better than that, it's the 200th anniversary of a show that's been going for so many years now. I can't even begin to tell you. It's fantastic. So here we are, 200th anniversary, plenty of plankery to get on with. So let's start straight away. We've got a fantastic panel. Laura Dodsworth is here. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here. Amanda Devlin is here from The Sun. Let's kick straight away off, shall we say, with Laura. What have you got for us?
Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much
indeed. It sounds really old, doesn't it? 200
200 shows.
Exciting.
200 shows. I'm very proud of it.
This is such a great show. It
really
really deserves its 200th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to kick it off with this is such a good nomination. I'm building up.
If you say so yourself.
But you know when something's got you really hot under the collar.
Yes.
And you're just steaming. That's what this story has done to me.
Yeah.
And then when you hear what the story is, you'll be like, Laura, take a chill pill.
Yeah.
So my nomination is St John's College in Cambridge.
Yes.
Because they have stripped funding from their mixed-sex voice choir called St John's Voices, and they're going to
disband it. It's not one of these places
that
they stupidly call St John's College, is it? Is it St
Oh,
John's?
I'm just
I don't know. I've never understood St John.
I'm not posh enough for all that. St John's for me.
That'll do.
So they've done this, though, in order to make way for more diverse musical genres.
Okay.
There are three reasons why this is an absolutely awful idea.
Right.
The first is that English choral music is an unremittingly beautiful jewel in the rich cultural heritage of this country.
Yeah.
I don't know how the idiots in charge there think that the masters such as Mozart, Beethoven, Allegri, Monteverdi, Tallis and Bird, etc., can make way for diversity, as though that's a good thing. It's not. What are they going to replace English choral music with in church? Idiots. Right. The second reason is that it's interesting how only some sorts of diversity really matter.
It's not really diversity, is it?
Because this was a mixed-sex choir. You know, historically, only men have been in these choirs. Right. And this choir, St John's Voices, is a newcomer on the block. So for 10 years, women and men have had equal opportunity to sing in a choir. When they get rid of that choir, although there are now a few women allowed on the official choir of St John's Church, College, there are only going to be a few places. So that means that it's a terrible loss for gender inclusion. So this is not really about diversity, which leads me to the third point. This is part of a bigger trend. It feels like an attack on English culture and beauty. And I can't help feeling that
Has it got something to do with slavery? Is it because, you know, the slaves used to be forced to listen to it at some point in the past history?
This one I don't think is about slavery, but, you know, it's that kind of ilk, isn't it? You can't help thinking that they just hate beauty.
Yes.
The church is apparently
they hate anything British or English as well.
They hate anything English, especially English, Mike. Yeah. Now, the church is going to reduce its services so that the church can be used for more civic functions.
Oh, yeah.
I think the church, in capitals, has completely forgotten what it is and what it's for.
Well, I'm absolutely with you there, because I did a little monologue this week about the church having basically, the Church of England in particular, having certainly lost faith in Christianity. Because apart from anything else, they've now invented racism as a sin. And I went and checked, and the 7 deadly sins don't include racism. So racism is not a sin, as far as I'm aware. The Church of England have now got anti-racism scholars everywhere.
Well, it's because...
you know, sorry, right.
Yeah, no, it's because they've replaced theology with ideology.
Yes.
And it's the ideology of critical race theory and its diabolical offshoot, which is DEI.
Right.
And you're quite right. This new religion of woke that is instituted has a new original sin.
Yeah.
And that new original sin is slavery. So you're bang on the ball there. Yeah. But, you know, English choral music is our greatest contribution to world civilization of music.
Yes.
We've always played second fiddle to the French and the Germans and the Italians more broadly.
Yes.
But that English choral tradition we have maintained here, whereas it's been lost on the continent. Catholics simply don't have it. I'm a Catholic. Apart from Westminster Cathedral, there's no Catholic choir in the country that can hold a candle to that glorious Anglican tradition that you see in King's College, Cambridge, or Westminster Abbey. And to denigrate that in this way, to turn your back on it when there are actually so few practitioners of it left, I think is a great crime against civilization.
It is. So well said. But it's not just that. You know, there's this blatant contradiction contained in it, because they say it's for diverse musical genres, while getting rid of the diverse choir that gives girl choristers a place to go. This is how women sing in choirs. So it's nothing to do with diversity. It's to do with hating English tradition, culture and beauty. And the church doesn't even know what it is, because it wants to shut its services for civic
And it's yet another
functions.
example, isn't it, of our further education systems being completely and utterly infested by this madness. Complete and utter cobblers. It's a very good start. Rafe, What's your first nomination?
Well, let's start as we mean to continue.
Yes.
So more madness from our museums. This time it's the Victoria and Albert Museum, which has branded the Iron Lady, Mrs. T herself, as being akin to Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden.
Incredible.
This is in the context of a caption accompanying some Punch and Judy puppets. That's an exhibition, and it's discussing how over the years, the devil in Punch and Judy, now the crocodile, has been portrayed by different characters.
Yes.
But I'm sort of imagining the scene of those curators deciding on the captions, like, all right, 3 villains. Adolf Hitler, of course. Osama bin Laden, excellent. Now, who's as bad as those? Joseph Stalin? Oh, no, he's a communist. You can't criticise the communists, can you? No. Maybe Jack the Ripper. No. He only killed 5 people.
Fred West.
He's not evil enough, is he? I know. The first female Prime Minister who saved the British economy, liberated the Falklands, and gave us back pride and self-confidence.
And also, by the way, the most successful Prime Minister and leader of any country, I think, in Western Europe ever. Because she was re-elected, wasn't she, twice? She won 3 times.
I mean, I'm just surprised that British youth haven't been complaining that Osama bin Laden's been linked to Thatcher and Hitler.
Actually.
Last year, remember these TikTok videos celebrating
You say that, but there will be people, particularly on Twitter, who will say how absolutely awful for them because, you know, she really was the devil incarnate.
But this is all part of this broader, you know, capture of our cultural institutions by the progressives, by the woke left. Do you remember when we were growing up? You always had this idea of librarians and museum curators being shy, timid types, socially awkward, completely harmless. Now, these are sort of, you know, the most fierce culture warriors. You know, they're sort of...
you know who it is? It's Tristram. It's Tristram Hunt is the guy who's the sort of curator of the V&A, who's a former Labour Party member, and, well, he may still be a former Labour Party MP, used to work for Ed Millipede, if you remember.
Oh, yes.
And he was, of course... educated at University College School in Hampstead, very, very expensive, most expensive boys' school, I think, in the country. And then he went on to Oxbridge, I think, and has forever been writing articles in The Guardian and The Observer. So, of course, he hates Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, and just look at these collections now. Collections and exhibitions are now being weaponised to become propaganda tools to advance a political agenda. You can't just go to a museum now and enjoy something without being constantly hectored and lectured at. And we, the British taxpayers, are funding this. And I think institutions that persistently violate our you know, push an agenda, I think they should lose government funding.
Yes, I think they should. Now, I think we've got a little bit of videos for those of you who are hankering for a bit of Thatcher. Have a look at this.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favourite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
My God, she was brilliant, wasn't she?
She really
and, I mean, when you see what we have before us now in Parliament, you do worry, don't you, that we're never going to see the like of Mrs Thatcher again, or Lady Thatcher, as she's now known. But there is this kind of horrible section of society. I remember when they had her funeral. It wasn't a state funeral, because she didn't want one, but it was a sort of an open funeral, as it were. People turned up to boo as the coffin was being pushed past. You know, you just thought, what's wrong with people? You know,
the thing that I always
and she transformed this country, basically.
The thing I've always found most amazing is the people who hate Thatcher most are those who were born after she left office.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
People with no understanding of the real woman, just this pantomime villain, or this Punch and Judy doll, and the spitting image, you know, sort of thing.
They've fallen for the story.
Yeah.
I mean, the V&A particularly hates her. The V&A was offered all of her clothes, you know, her wardrobe, as a gift because the family didn't want to break it up, and the V&A turned it down.
Yes. And that's the other thing. I think that there's been a sort of normalisation of abuse to people like Mrs Thatcher, you know, so left-wing comedians, you know, the BBC has been having a go at Thatcher for years and years and years, all sorts of, you know, politicians. You might remember John McDonnell, the man who would have been Chancellor under Jerry Corbyn's government, said he wished he could have gone back in time to assassinate her. And you kind of go,
that's sick taste
probably
anyway.
Slightly over the top, you know. And as I say, I lived, I'm afraid, back in the days before she got in, and it was pretty bloody awful. You know, life in 1970s Britain before Thatcher fixed it was terrible. You couldn't get buried, you know, the grave diggers were on strike. Leicester Square was literally piled high with rubbish in the middle of it, you know, because the bin men were on strike. You couldn't get a train anywhere.
Sounds like today.
A bit like now, actually.
Yeah,
I do say,
familiar.
you know, people talk about going back to 1979 and this sort of election that's coming up, and it really does feel as though, although it was a lot worse thing, because people were a lot poorer. Nobody really had much, whereas we've all got much more now. Nobody had mobile phones. You might be lucky if you had a tiny little black and white, you know, TV screen. Nobody had cars really to speak of. You know, it was a much simpler life.
But that's
we all
exactly
lived.
how they, in inverted commas, seem to want us to be in the future. No cars for you, not too much fun to you, don't like your culture. You know, there's a similarity between our two nominations. And the thing is that the people in our institutions who should be the very ones who defend our culture and beauty and truth and all of our heritage are the ones who seem most intent on doing it down and destroying it. And I think that, you know, to any kind of casual observer on the outside, there's obviously like horror music. I want to go to museums. You know, we feel that betrayal really hard because we see what they're doing and we don't like it.
And the difference between the 70s and now, that I would say, and why it was better then in some ways, is we had a common culture. We shared values, we were united, we all watched the same shows, and we had a similar sense of belief system. All of that has gone
It was
now.
a very different place. I mean, I don't know about you, Amanda, but I mean, do you go to museums and look at them and go, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know Britain was like that at all? Because I don't know what museums represent Britain as anymore.
I know it's scary. I think that that's the point that's scary about things, is that you're worrying when you look back on, in the future, when we look back on things, it's being obscured into what it's not actually how we as normal people see life now, but it's how they want us to be represented. And it really worries me about, in the future, how people look back on this.
I know. Well, listen, I mean, the one good thing about the 70s is Katie Price wasn't around in the 70s.
I know.
She is now.
I'm sorry, I'm bringing the tone down as usual.
Let's get out of this cultural war scenario and get into some real tabloid news. Let's
always bringing the tone down when I come to see you, Mike. But basically, Katie Price has been declared bankrupt for the second time.
I didn't know you could be declared bankrupt more than once.
Do you know what? I didn't, because she's still got money owed.
It's quite an achievement, isn't it?
So Katie Price is on OnlyFans, which probably will be in a museum at some point actually in the future. So she has been told already, because she's been made bankrupt the first time, that her 40% of her earnings from that have got to go in to be paying off this debt. So that's one thing. But now she's got an £800,000 bill that she needs to pay, and she hadn't been responding to letters asking her to pay it, and then to go to court, and didn't turn up for court, and they've made her bankrupt. I was actually at a party that same day with Katie Price.
Really?
She was, it was a big celeb bash, and she turned up with her new boyfriend, and she was drinking, partying, vaping inside, having a great time, dancing around, and she'd just been made bankrupt. I mean, I would love to have that kind of positivity. Something goes wrong like that for my life, I might not be feeling like that.
Used to turn up in. Has she still got the pink taxi or the pink Range Rover?
She didn't have that one. She's got.
She keeps getting
so
done
her vehicles
for
are
driving
all,
offences as well, isn't she?
Yeah, so her vehicles are all that's trademark is like bright pink. But she's been banned from driving 6 times in the past 10 years, and then a Tory MP
That's
6 times
ban,
in 10 years, and a Tory MP this week called for her to be put in prison for this. You know, how many times can she be let off? Katie Price called him an and said that actually, you know, it's up to me, it's my business, blah, blah, blah. She obviously would say, if she was here today, that she's had a lot of struggles in her life, and, you know, and we have to respect that as well. But I think there's something about someone like Katie, when they've got this huge platform, you know, she's got young girls who look to her. She's got a huge...
I don't know if she does anymore.
Are you sure?
I'll tell you what, let's have a look at...
Hang on a second. She does, because she's grown up about... This is decades. She was doing the Sun Page 3 stuff when she was, 18, right? So think how she's in her 40s, 45 now. So that's a whole time. A lot of people have kind of grown up with her and know her.
She doesn't look anything like
She's changed a little bit.
That's right. She's changed her entire face. I mean, it doesn't even look like she used to
look. But she's rebranded herself in more ways than one. She has rebranded herself to stay across... As a double bankrupt who keeps getting done for drunk driving. To stay across, in decades, to stay relevant to lots of different people, gone into different industries where it's OnlyFans, which is going to TV.
Well, let's have a look at her singing, because we're nearly out of time. Have a look at this.
Must we?
Yeah, this is Katie Price singing.
There are dogs howling all over.
Maybe that could be one of the new forms of diversity that they could have at St John's.
St John's College.
We go round, complete the circle. Well, there we are. That's the first opening bit of Plank of the Week. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the BBC. We're going to be talking as well about those idiots from Just Stop Oil. This is Plank of the Week. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night on talkTV. Where on earth would you be if you were not here? This is the only place to be because we are now joined by Andre Walker. As I said before, it is the 200th anniversary of Plank of the Week, and I think Andre was one of the first people ever on it. So welcome to you.
Oh, wow.
Have you got a clip of that? Oh, apparently there's a clip of the first show. Let's do it. Go. Welcome to a brand new show on Talk Radio on TV. This is called Plank of the Week. So what I've asked Annunziata and Russell to do today, and I'm going to be doing it as well, is to come up with, say, 3 or 4 names of people that have particularly irritated them over the past week. And we're going to try and whittle it all down to one. Well, there we are. That's what I used to look like.
So
you know, that's in the same room before they did all this incredible stuff to it. So
Wow.
They look like a passport photo.
So it started here, and that was Russell Quirk and Annunziata Rees-Mogg, who were the first 2 participants. But you must have been on it pretty early.
I thought I was in the first episode, but that has proved me wrong.
Yes, well, there we are.
Devastating.
You were certainly in one of the very early ones. So, anyway, welcome back. And you want to talk about the BBC?
Well, I wanted to slag off the public services in this country, one of them being the London Underground, which is an absolute disgrace. But let's stick with the programme.
Yes.
The BBC. So, look, we've seen the popularity of Reform UK. The BBC apparently believe that they are far right. I am so sick of these labels, and I'm so sick of these useless, unpopular, obnoxious BBC executives having a go at everyone else. As far as I'm concerned, they're far left.
Yes.
So shove that.
Yeah, well, exactly right. We've actually got, by coincidence, Tim Davie, who appeared before the Media Culture Committee this week, the Media Culture and Sport Committee this week, and he was asked about whether or not he thought the BBC was impartial and how he thought they were doing. And you will think, I think this is the funniest thing that I've ever seen. Have a look at this.
Overall, we're doing a good job in terms of delivering impartial coverage amidst enormous pressure. One of the things I talk a lot about is 70% of the world now does not have a free press. The polarisation in society is profound. So any institution like ourselves to steer the course amongst the noise, the storms of social media is very demanding.
The storms of social media, many of which, of course, are stoked by one Gary Lineker, who works for Tim Davie at the BBC.
Let me tell you something that was joyous to me. I had a bailiff come round demanding that I buy a TV licence, and because I watch this on catch-up, I don't need one.
No.
I'm absolutely delighted.
You and about 2 or 3 million other people since last year have not bothered to renew their TV licence. They just don't want it.
What's amazing is they want me to write to them to prove that I don't need a TV licence. What I actually did was sold him to go away.
Yes, quite right
in
too.
an appropriate fashion.
Well, of course, if you were an elderly woman or somebody who was slightly vulnerable, they would have put the bailiffs on you and possibly taken you to court
self-define
and prosecuted you, because that's what they do.
I self-define as an elderly woman.
Do you? Well, don't tell them that, because they'll come after you and they'll lock you up, because that's what they do. They go after vulnerable people who don't always know what they're doing and who can't always look after their own bill-paying situations. And they prosecute them and they drag them through the courts and they fine them and they sometimes put them in prison. It's absolutely disgraceful what they do.
It is terrible. But, you know, when he talks about the storms of social media, now there's a lot wrong with social media. You know, it's run by algorithms, which are like secret editors. We don't know how they work. But actually what he really doesn't like about social media is the fact that ordinary people can find any information they want and don't have to rely on the BBC News.
Right.
It's this massive, threatening, democratic massive people, and they don't like that. They don't like us finding out.
But they did have to apologise to Richard Tice and Reform, because he approached them and said, you know, this is not a far-right organisation, you shouldn't call it that. And they admitted they got it completely wrong.
But Mike, what I don't understand is why the smears? Why not just say, we don't agree with Richard Tice, we don't like him, or whatever? And I would argue the reason...
Well, that's because they're impartial. They can't say that, you see.
That's right. They're not willing to engage on the real issues. They're not willing to talk about the fact that our body politic is a mess and that the media is an even bigger mess. What they want to do is just besmirch people's character. Richard Tice has done nothing to deserve this.
No, exactly right. And also, go on, sorry.
No, but the prevailing ideology at the BBC and our institutions is that essentially you are on the far right if you hold what used to be mainstream views 20 years ago.
They think
when I was growing up, you had
far right.
the far right, the hard right, the centre right. Far right were the neo-Nazi skinheads. Hard right was people like Norman Tebbit, perhaps UKIP. centre-right. Right. But now anyone who doesn't believe in massive immigration is far-right. That's the majority of this country. Anyone who doesn't believe that a woman has a penis is far-right. That's the majority of this country. Yeah. If you like Lord of the Rings and Narnia and watching Michael Portillo, God help us, on Great British Railway Journeys, according to Prevent, you're also on the far right. You know? Really? This is the insanity that we have.
It is incredible. And the BBC is honeycombed with these kind of people, though, because, you know, we've seen one sort of scandal after another. The most ridiculous BBC setup now is BBC Verify, set up by that woman, what's her name, Arabella Spring or something, Mariana Spring, who had to be forced to tell that she faked her CV to get the job at the BBC. So she didn't even verify her own CV, which is pretty hilarious.
The whole thing's a complete joke, isn't it? And it's sad, really, because of the way that the BBC is set up, because of this licence fee, that's why they can get away with all this garbage. But I will say one thing to you, Mike. Thank God that nobody watches Newsnight. If people watch Newsnight, we'd have real problems in this country.
They really would, yeah. Luckily, nobody does. Now, I'm going to come back to an old favourite with my first nomination. It is those lovely people from Just Stop Oil, because they just refuse to go away.
Yeah, they're still about.
They're still about, and they keep. I mean, talk of Katie Price reinventing herself. These people keep reinventing themselves. You know, one week they're going to go and demonstrate on the M25, then they stop doing that and they go, "Oh, that's not working, so we'll try a different tactic." Oh, I know, we'll go and demonstrate outside people's houses. So they've taken to, you know, sort of hanging around people's politicians' houses in particular. Emily Thornberry was one that they targeted. They went to her house and tried to put a letter through her letterbox, basically demanding that she leave the Labour Party because of their stance on the climate situation. So they decided that that wasn't good enough, so they thought they'd interrupt one of her meetings. Have a look at this.
Labour are rolling back their commitments to the climate. We need Labour to be brave, to not be cowardly at this moment. We need you to make a commitment at this moment.
Is that confetti?
That's confetti. They've stopped throwing paint over people and powder over people because people were getting quite sort of upset about that. So they thought confetti would be funnier. But it won't surprise you to know the two people there. The one speaking was Genevieve, a young woman who happens to be I think a student lecturer somewhere in Northern Ireland. And the bloke was called Casper. And I've got some even better news for you. Here's Casper explaining why he did it.
I'm Casper, I'm from North London, and I used to be a Labour member. Except now it's clear that they are completely unable to face up to the climate crisis.
He looks like one of those guys you used to get in the 70s pretending to be French. You know, the blue and white striped T-shirt and a bike with some onions on it.
I love the dodgy
what's the dodgy moustache? What's going on there? Casper. I mean, come on.
They're a very funny little cult.
They're very odd.
Aren't they?
Funny little cult is a good word.
I know we're laughing, but it is a scary thought of them going to a politician's house, because we have to. I mean,
they shouldn't be doing that.
We have to respect. There's got to be a line drawn somewhere. Come on, you know, they've got constituency offices. You could go to Westminster, but to go to their home when they've got their family there, they don't have security. Normal MPs.
No, they don't.
And so,
and they've got, as you said, they've got kids inside.
We know what's happened in the past, and this could be violent. You're talking about putting a letter through the door. We don't know. Well, what's in that? We're not. Right. This is not being checked.
Intimidation, really,
as far as I'm concerned.
I think my favourite story about a politician being visited by anyone was Arthur Scargill's wife invaded Michael Heseltine's garden and built an open-cast mine. And she honestly said in the newspapers, I wanted him to know what it was like to wake up next to a hideous eyesore every morning. And I thought, you're married to Scargill. Right. How can you make that?
Exactly right. Also, how big is his garden that you can build an open-cast mine in it? He doesn't even notice, you know, for weeks on end. What's that going on over there?
But they are always called, you know, Pippa and Rupert.
Yeah.
Never Barry the
well, the one who keeps getting sent to prison is Phoebe.
Well, Phoebe, she was
one who went to the £41,000 a year school. I think it's Eastbourne College. And her dad is a sort of multi-millionaire hedge fund guy or something.
Well, if she lives on the campus, at least she's not driving there, so she's not a hypocrite.
But this is the thing. I mean, these are all people who don't need... I don't know what Casper does for a living, but he said he used to be a member of the Labour Party. I should actually just give an honorary mention to a man who quite often makes it onto Plank of the Week today, Owen Jones, because he rather petulantly put out a big piece in The Guardian today saying that he's finally given up on the Labour Party and he's resigned his membership.
Well, he's too far left.
Poor little Diddums.
He's too far left.
He is? Yeah, he's gone off presumably to join a socialist worker.
Because we never say far left, do we?
No.
But we probably should do.
Although, do you know, it was interesting, there was actually a far-left terrorist convicted this very week of plotting, and he was basically an anarchist stroke far-left terrorist, the first one ever. And what did the BBC call him? Just a terrorist. Didn't call him anything that linked him with anarchy or the far left, interestingly enough.
Interesting.
Anyway, Laura, back to you, talking of crazy political parties.
Yeah, well, OK, so my second nomination is the SNP for their hate crime law, which takes effect on the 1st of April. But it's not a joke. It poses a really existential...
It's a ridiculous law, isn't it?
Let me tell you how ridiculous it is. But in summary, it poses an existential threat to free speech.
Yes.
And I think it's actually going to turn Scotland into a frankly terrifying backwater of the United Kingdom.
Hasn't got far to go, some would say.
Do you know, there's things that people have said here tonight that could potentially be reported as hate speech
do you know what's
after
funny?
the 1st
Do you know
of
what's
April
funny? Because you don't even have to be in Scotland. All you have to be is able to be heard in Scotland. So if you're a broadcaster, for example, as we are, you know, we could be in all sorts of breaches.
Yes. So Rafe said earlier that trans women have penises or something like that, you know. That would be hate speech.
Women don't have penises, I think he was saying.
So, yeah, you know, there's all these different permutations of things you can't say that count as hate speech. No. And the thing about this law is it rests on a very flimsy definition as well.
Yeah.
So it's considered threatening or inciting hate speech if a reasonable person would consider it so. Now, hate speech is in itself...
in Scotland.
Thank you. Hate speech itself is difficult to define, but then you have to define a reasonable person. And who will this all be monitored and enforced by? Well, Police Scotland.
Humza useless.
Police Scotland have had a 2-hour online training session on how to enforce this law, and leaked material from them shows that they're going to be going after performers and comedians. You know, what's going to happen to the Edinburgh Fringe. Yeah. And there is this real feeling already that extremist activists are going to weaponise it to shut down people they don't like. We've had extreme transgender activists.
To be fair, that's already happening. I was at the Edinburgh Fringe last year doing a show with Alex Salmond, funnily enough, and you should have seen the looks I was getting from the people working on the show. You know, they literally didn't even want to acknowledge that we were there.
But it's going to get so much worse. So extremist transgender activists have already been saying that they're going to go after J.K. Rowling for her points that, you know, most ordinary, reasonable people, I think, would think are quite normal, that women don't have penises.
Well, the police in England have already said that she has not broken any law by saying what she said.
But Police Scotland have said they will investigate every complaint. So while they won't investigate things like windows being smashed in, they've said that, they will investigate a complaint like that.
Well, unbelievable.
I think the only way to deal with this is just to treat fire with fire, and as soon as this law comes into place, start reporting Humza useless for that terribly racist speech he delivered in the legislature against white people. Right. And if I'm offended by that, it's all in the view of the beholder.
Well, the other way you could go is everybody breaks the new law, and then they don't have enough police to deal with it.
But that, funnily enough, that happened when the Metropolitan Police was advertising a few years ago. Do you want to report a far-right extremist? Yeah. I was one of 10 to 15,000 people who reported themselves. And the Met was just completely deluged with all this. One of the people, funnily enough, was Ian Dale, who could not be in any way a far-right extremist. But in the end, they hadn't asked for far-left extremists, only far-right. Yeah. So we all reported ourselves. They gave up and all went home. So that was good.
Yeah, Mike, I'm worried if you go back to Edinburgh Fringe this year, will you be sent to prison?
Well, I don't think they can send you to prison straight away. I think they still have to take you through the court process.
Free the Edinburgh one.
You know, I mean, I wouldn't mind. It'd be good publicity for me. I'd be quite happy.
They're not going to have enough prison places. They're not going to be able to get through us all, are they?
Well, just remember, there's also a tax. You know, if you can't criticise age here now, disability, religion. So go to the Fringe, tell a joke about the elderly Jewish rabbi who bumped into a black lesbian in a wheelchair in a gender-neutral toilet. Yeah. You will tick every single one of those, and you can become the poster child for it.
Yeah.
If you look, Mike, I like you very much, but if you were prosecuted and jailed in Scotland, A, I would love it, but B, especially when you self-defined yourself as a woman and caused all manner of chaos.
That would be a real nightmare. Maybe I could get Humza useless to resign, because he'd be so bamboozled by trying to explain what it was. The good thing about when I did live there, they brought in a smoking ban, and I never forgave Jack McConnell for it. He was the first minister. I knew him quite well in those days, and I still smoked in those days. But the only place in Scotland where you were still allowed to smoke when they brought the smoking ban in was Sockton Prison, which was outside of Edinburgh, because they had an exemption in some way. So you could get sent to prison for smoking in public, where you could then smoke in public.
Well, it's like being sent to prison for a TV licence offence. You don't need the licence in prison.
Yeah, you don't. You could get a free BBC.
You know, one of the worst things about this law is it's not just the public space, it's the home. Yeah. So you could have a situation where children report their parents for hate speech, which is in common with every other totalitarian and communist regime in the world.
Yes.
And
the
that's
lives
Scotland.
of others.
That's Scotland now.
I know. Bloody hell. How ridiculous is that? Useless. You are worse than useless. You're now dangerous. Might start calling him that. Humza dangerous. Coming up next, more from Andre Walker on the Canadian police. See if they're any more sensible than the Scottish ones. And of course, we've got to talk about those tax collectors as well. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week, and we are right up against the clock, so we're going to get straight to it. Amanda Devlin is here, and you've got the tax of collectors for us, which is always nice. I don't think they've been nominated before.
HMRC.
Yeah.
So, honestly, when you hear it, you just think, what? They've had this plan, a very cunning plan, to just suddenly get rid of, for half the year, you can't call the self-assessment number and get help with doing your taxes. They're just going to divert you online.
Yes. They're shutting down for the summer, they say, right? Now,
yeah,
the thing that I find interesting about this is that at HMRC, summer begins on April the 8th.
Yeah.
Which, in everybody else's book, is still the Easter holidays.
April the 8th, and I'm thinking, I would love that job. So you just kind of don't turn up
just
for the majority of the year.
Yeah.
Just go off, have a lovely summer, get a tan, come back, and then work on it. There was such fury that within a day, there's been a U-turn, and it had been overturned.
Well, they seem to have made the decision before actually telling anybody in the government, didn't they?
Yes,
and I think it was a minister who got up and said,
Jeremy Hunt ended up.
He
ended up getting it. Our Chancellor ended up having to get involved in it and said, "This is crazy.
Right.
We need to do something about it." And then the big boss of HMRC came out and said, "Oh, well, we've listened to you." I hate when they do that.
Yes.
They say, "Oh, we've listened." It's like, well, can't you just make the right decision in the first place?
Exactly.
We don't have time for this.
Well,
We're all too busy. I can't be running
amazing
HMRC at the same time.
Yeah.
I want you to get on with that job.
Well, one of the reasons for doing it, they said, was that, you know, when we did it before, the thing that really was interesting was that when we put the lines back up, we were deluged with complaints and calls from people who needed help. So they thought that was a good thing. So we thought we'd do it again, because then we get loads more people to ring in.
There's about 12 million people who need to use this service.
Yeah.
And we're already in a society where we're all being directed online. And you know, I know that my mum would love to just be able to speak to someone on the phone.
Right.
You know, if she can, she'll
not everybody
try
can
her
go
best
online.
and go online. But I think it's important to have the option, and to just completely take that away. It's causing chaos for people, because then, like you said, they go online, something doesn't work, and you know what it's like. That normally happens.
But that's the thing.
Something doesn't work, and then you try and call.
I mean, sometimes these things are like some kind of weird, you know, kind of Egyptian puzzle, when you can't find your way to the page you want to get to, and then you get stuck somewhere else and start again. It's a nightmare.
I hate when a robot insists you have to prove you're not a robot.
Yeah.
I
know.
Listen, it's just ranking.
I always get those wrong as well. How many bikes are in this picture? And I'm going, is that a handlebar? What is it? I don't know.
I think there's obviously a type of brain that can't do those. I can't do those.
I find it quite difficult.
I'm like, I've got kind of capture blindness.
Right.
But if
do you know the other one I can't do is when they do those weird letters. You know that you have.
Oh, I hate that.
I can never get those.
Do it at all. And if it's some kind of IQ test, it just makes me feel miserable.
Yeah.
But if you've ever had to call HMRC about your self-assessment, and I have, and it could be really complex. You might have quite a complex question. It's nothing you can solve online. You have to speak to an expert on the end of the phone. And even with all the lines open, it is torturous getting through.
And when
to
it goes,
somebody.
you know, which question would you like to ask? And they give you 15 questions, and it's not one of them. You're going, well, can I write the question? No, you can't write the question. You have to go to another section and see whether you can fill out another form.
Or those ones that just revolve.
Yeah.
When you end up, you go, hang on a second, I remember being here about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I've pressed every button.
I'd love to know what they would have done with that extra money. I presume they were going to get back from all of that time off from not answering the phones.
Well, they don't care.
As usual, it wouldn't end up helping us.
It's not their money. They don't give a monkeys. Now, let's have a look at somebody called Mohammed, who's going to explain why he loves working at HMRC.
So for me, HMRC is not just a workplace. It's an inclusive space that truly understands and supports my personal needs. A workplace that I genuinely enjoy being a part of.
The potential. Piss off.
Why is he in a garden centre?
I don't know. Why have they got so many plants? I mean, I suppose we should be thankful at least he's in the office. But you notice there's nobody there answering any phones.
Only for filming, and then he's just going to clock off and go home.
Unbelievable.
For his summer holiday from April.
I know. Rafe, over to you. You got one of the banks for us.
Yes, so Lloyds has advised its staff not to use the term widow because it is too vivid and risks triggering personal trauma in people, you know. I was like, at this point, we should bring out Christopher Biggins and ask whether he was traumatised playing Widow Twanky for years.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And instead of calling them widow, we're supposed to say that they're separated. Which I think
separated?
Is such an offensive term.
But actually, that's interesting.
If you've been married for 60 years to someone you really love and they die, the idea that you're separated means you've got a failed relationship.
Also, surely that's legally dodgy as well, because when you have to fill out those forms as to what your marital status is, you can be single, you can be married, you can be divorced, you can be separated. You can probably be... Yeah, I mean, if your partner's dead, I don't think any of those apply, do they?
No, they don't. Well, that's the whole.
That's a particularly bad divorce.
That's the whole. But what makes it even more ridiculous is that Lloyds owns Scottish Widows.
Yes,
huge insurance. Scottish separated.
And well, that's just it. So should they call it? Well, that sounds like more like an SNP independence campaign there. Scottish separatists, you know. And that shows you, I think, the hypocrisy of virtue signalling. Nothing shows it more. If they really believed any of this guff, they would call it Scottish separatists, wouldn't they?
I know. But I mean, I've said this to Laura many times when we've been on various shows together, that the rewriting of either history or language always results in a less accurate description because they don't use the right words, and so therefore they're now struggling for a word that sounds like widows that would say somebody who's died.
Yeah, and then you get confused and it changes the meaning. And you know, there's a similarity between this plank and mine just now as well, which is it's about prioritising feelings over facts. I mean, God forbid somebody should be upset because their spouse has died. Well, you know what? They are upset.
They probably are upset.
They will be upset.
Unless they killed them, obviously.
And accurately describing what's
then
happened.
They wouldn't be so upset.
I think there's a kind of a dignity and an honour in it. You know, if my husband had died, I'd actually probably be offended if somebody called me separated rather than widowed. Accurately describe the feelings. Right. It's like the hate crime law.
Yes.
It's all about hurty feelings. You know that old rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
And the new ad campaign for the hate crime law is hate hurts, and it twists the rhyme round, and it's saying, don't be resilient, don't be resilient anymore, be a fragile snowflake. Your hurty feelings count for more than anything else.
It's even the word death. You never hear the word death any longer, even in the media. It's all about he's passed over, he was taken, you know, and suddenly we've created a cowardly world where no one is able to actually accept reality.
And it's not as accurate.
I think the next thing we need to do with Lloyds, just to go whole hog all the way, give Dylan Mulvaney a self-invested ISA with Bud Light shirts.
Yes, very good.
That would be the
let him ruin Lloyds Bank, another company. Yeah,
but it's not just widows.
Amanda, you wanted to say something?
No, I just think it's another person that's in this company, or people are in a company where they're spending all of this money, all of this time coming up with these ludicrous ideas, where the normal person who's ever complained about that, and that's happening with everyone. Again, with HMRC, who came up with that idea and decided to do that. That's what just drives me absolutely mad.
Well, the place is full of them. What about widower? Is that okay, or is that banned as well?
No, that must be banned
presumably
as well.
too. But this is about the devil making work for idle hands, because these people have to justify their jobs. All they do is sit around and think, well, how can we justify
take these words
what
out.
we do? They've also banned guinea pig, you know, because apparently if you mention the name of that little furry critter, vegans are going to trip over their plastic shoes with visions of, you know, animal experimentation. So that's
I wouldn't have thought there's much cause for the use of the words guinea pig in banking, is there? I mean, why would you be talking about guinea pigs?
I didn't want to say that because I thought I'm not great at maths.
I mean, widows, yes, because obviously you're talking about wills and things, but guinea pig, anyway, never mind. Andre, you've got something from over the water for us.
Well, do you know what? I really wanted to nominate Justin Trudeau, but it's not his fault on this occasion. So let's make that clear. People are going to be disappointed. I accept that. So Canadian police have said that the best way to avoid a burglar injuring you is not really to phone the police, it's to leave your car keys near enough to the front door so the burglars can get them very easily. Now, the police have said, and let's not be critical, Toronto police have said, remember, and this is their reason, the guns these guys carry are not toy guns, they're real.
Really?
Well, that's a surprise, isn't it?
Well,
unbelievable.
It really is. We've actually got, I think, a clip from the police press conference. Have a look at this.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door. Because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else. A lot of them that they're arresting have guns on them, and they're not toy guns, they're real guns. They're loaded.
Sorry.
Was that Nicola Sturgeon?
Yeah. Yes. He's moved. Why don't you just say leave the keys in the car? Yeah, I mean, why bother with having them break the glass to get the key? Just leave the key in the car.
No, why not just drive your car containing all your property to the streets, to the nearest looking drug-addled criminals, and just say, here you go.
Yeah. And it won't be hard to find in Toronto the way that Justin Trudeau's... I knew I'd get Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, good.
The way that he's destroyed Canada I think he's humbled a great nation. It's
I used to go to Toronto a lot when I lived in New York, and it was a great city. Now. Is it not great anymore?
Oh no, it's full. Well, it's like all these woke places. It's like California. Yeah. It's absolutely full of drug addicts. It's absolutely full of uncontrolled immigration. It's absolutely full of all crime, poverty, and ignorance. All the things that I'm used to coming from Lee in Lancashire, but they weren't used to it in Toronto.
I thought you were going to say Windsor for a minute there. You know,
I lived in Toronto for years, and it's gone up 400% increase in home invasions and so forth.
Oh,
I mean, when I was living in Toronto, you would put out milk and cookies for Santa Claus. No. Now you put out your keys for home invaders. You know, that's how things have changed in the society.
And I mean, again, to have police sitting there with a straight face, basically saying nothing about the fact that they're going to do anything about it. They're not in any way suggesting, you know, well, obviously, if it does happen to you, try and give us a call as soon as you can, and we'll see if we can track them down. Nothing like that. I mean, that's actually their job.
It seems like a great argument in favour of owning a gun, to be honest.
Well, yeah. Absolutely right.
But Mike, doesn't this talk to, and we see it time and time again, certainly on this show, public bodies where they're doing their best. No, actually, the police should successfully police.
Yes.
You know, if you can't run the HMRC, get another job.
Right.
If you can't run Bud Light, get another job.
Yeah.
But actually, we see all of these institutions invaded by people who expect pity for being crap at what they do.
Yeah, this is the trouble. You've got all of these businesses that have forgotten what business they're in. And all they're doing is hollowing themselves out from inside.
Correct.
To make sure that it all looks good to the wokists.
The way he was speaking, it's like talking to you like you're a child.
I know.
And that's how it just seems to be at the moment.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you say reinforce your front door, get security locks in, do all the stuff you can to defend your house?
I mean, when I was in
Are they working for criminals?
My office got broken into 3 times by the same guy. I found out later he was going down to the local snooker hall and asking people what they wanted in terms of office equipment. What? And then he would basically go to my gaff. And the first night, I put bars on the windows. I thought he'd come in the windows. The second time he did it, I put something like a special different lock on the door. You managed to somehow beat that. The third time he did it, I hired a security guard who had a gun. And I said, if he comes back, don't shoot him until I get there, because I'm going to shoot him, you know. And that's exactly, lucky for him, he never came back.
Oh,
but,
you old softy.
I know, I never got the opportunity, but I was just going to kneecap the guy. I mean, I wouldn't have killed him or anything, but, you know.
Why are you saying this on TV?
Well, because I didn't do it, and it was just something that could have happened that didn't happen. Honourable mention, by the way, before we come back with my next nomination, to the England football team, who are taking to Germany in the Euros their own perfume so that they can have good mental well-being during the Euros tournament.
Oh, no.
Jeez. And they've also changed the flag as well. Anyway, this is Plank of the Week. More coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham, and we are now in the final furlong. I'm about to choose who's actually going to win it. There's been some fantastic nominations, but I cannot do that without doing yet my second nomination. And, of course, the big story of the week, still, Kate, the Princess of Wales. But I'm not going to nominate Kate. The royal family got nominated last week. I'm going to nominate the conspiracy theorists and all of these crazy people around the world who will now join the ranks of those who think that 9/11 was an inside job, that the men did not land on the moon, you know, that Elvis is still alive and that Sheargar is still running around somewhere in a field with all 4 legs attached. And I don't know what to say. It all started in America, apparently. Matt Wallace, I don't know if you know who Matt Wallace is. He's a sort of conspiracy theorist who continually puts out clips of Taylor Swift singing. And all he says is, do you notice anything strange about this? And he gets about 20 million hits because people look at it and go, no.
I can't.
And there's nothing strange about it at all, right? But I mean, whatever his conspiracy theory is, he gets all these hits. And so it's sort of driven by social media. And there's now studies that have been done because of the way that this story has gone completely insane, that people actually love a conspiracy theory because they love the idea that they're being lied to by the authorities. They love the idea that the royal family is somehow in cahoots with the media. So this guy, Matt Wallace, puts out, I think, a few days ago, when the first video appeared of Kate and William at that Windsor farm shop. You may know it.
I do.
You haven't seen him around, have you?
I used to see the Queen around.
No, I mean, have you seen them around?
I haven't seen them around, no.
Anyway, so he puts out a thing on Rumble saying, you know, this is definitely not her, this is definitely a lookalike. And it got sort of, within literally a couple of hours, it got something like 100 million hits. And it just feeds on itself. And it's just, we're now in a place, I think, regardless of what you think of how badly they've handled it, and I think they haven't handled it well, There's nothing now that anybody can say that will convince these people that there's now a lookalike living in Kensington Palace or in Windsor with Prince William.
Because they've got an agenda.
Yeah.
And if you think about the amount of likes that they can get and the amount of followers they can get, that's what it's all about for them. You'd love to think it's about Kate and them being genuinely concerned, but I found a lot of the American TikTokers on there. The way that they were describing it, it was like a murder mystery, you know, and they're filming themselves, they're in front of a picture of Kate, but it's all about them. They're the bigger person in it.
But it's the nothing remotely charming about the fact that you can see the Prime Minister on the TV, you can see the King talking, but there's a bloke called Derek down the pub who knows better what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's a great British tradition.
Well, I used to say this when I used to go take call after call after call about 9/11, and suddenly everybody who was up at 3 o'clock in the morning having had a skinful was a massive expert on the demolition of high skyscrapers, and they'd never seen anything like it before. I said, well, how many times have you seen a giant building collapsing to the ground that you can now compare it to this? You know, and then the ones that bring in and say, why was there no wind on the moon? The flag's not moving. And you go, well...
I bet you all get this as well, but there are quite a few conspiracy theorists that accuse me of weird stuff online, like being a member of the Illuminati.
Oh, yes, I've had that.
Freemason.
Yeah.
I'm like, mate, I'm not a woman. I'm not in the good bit of the Freemasons. I'm not in any bit of the Freemasons.
No, there is a funny thing.
Also, a Mossad agent, and there is somebody...
Mossad, yes.
There are people I've had to block them because, you know, they'll find every picture they can find of me where one eye is covered or obscured in some way as evidence that I'm Illuminati.
Mike, I've got to tell you this. I am a Freemason, and you regularly accidentally use the password to the second-degree ceremony.
Who I do?
You do. So people keep walking up to me going, is Mike Graham secretly making Masonic jokes? But you regularly used an obscure word.
Who knew?
That's when he said piss off.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was it.
Guinea pig.
Guinea pig. That was it. But that's the other thing. I mean, you know, you do... for years, I was plagued by these people who all thought Bohemian Grove was a thing. I don't know if you've heard of that, but this is a place, a sort of retreat that a lot of very wealthy American businessmen and former presidents would go to, and it was a kind of a bit like the Iron John movement, you know. But except, according to the conspiracy theories, they were sacrificing babies there, and they go, look, it's on the internet, and you'd look at this sort of very shadowy piece of film on YouTube, which didn't show anything like that, and they go, it's true, you've been there, haven't you? And I'd be like, I really haven't. Anyway, look, the music has come, so that means we have to find a decision, and I'm going to go. I think I quite like the BBC. I quite like, obviously, the conspiracy theories. I quite like the Canadian police, and but the SNP I quite like as well. But I'm going to go rogue, and I'm going to give it to Rafe for the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum, for being absolute and utter planks. So here you go, Victoria and Albert Museum, and Tristram Hunt, by the way. You should have stuck to working with Ed Millipede, because now you're Plank of the Week. Thank you to Laura Dodsworth, thank you to Rafe, thank you to Amanda, thank you to Andre Walker, thank you to Tim, who's here as well. Thank you to Chuck for not screwing it up. This is Plank of the Week. I'll be back later.